Right. Welcome back to another episode of the Veterans Financial Edge. I am your host, Jason P. Scott, retired Sergeant First Class United States Army. Yep, got some music going this time. Woohoo! Right? Gotta love these cool little buttons I get to play with on Riverside FM. But I am partnered today with a really awesome individual. His name is Kevin Maddel. Was a Master at Arms Navy. We're going to talk a little bit about his story of service, what he's done post-service, and his involvement, Vet Tribe, which is a regional organization in the Bremerton, Kitsap, Seattle area of Washington here in the great United States. So, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to be here. Live studio audience.
Live studio audience, as far as AMA goes, right?
Self-generated.
Like I said, brother, so the folks watching, I've spent the last literally almost an hour prior to launching the show. We were supposed to start about an hour ago, but I really wanted to get a chance to meet Kevin. Kevin was referred to me, one of my previous guests, Kyle Peterson, that runs Be Vet Strong. The story is going to tie into this conversation here in a little bit. But Kevin, before we get that far down the road, introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself, your military service and your family and all that good stuff. Sound good?
Yeah. So my name's Kevin Maddel. I served in the Navy. I was just a little over 10 years with some reserve time, primarily all active duty. So I joined back in 2009. I rated as a Master at Arms, April 2009. I went to MAA school. First duty station, I originally am from California, from Southern California. And so when I went through A school, it was about an 8-week program. I finished A school, and they kind of asked us, hey, where do you want to go? You got order selected and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I would like to go somewhere besides California, preferably. So they're going down the list, and basically they're like, we have Spain, we have Rota, we have like all these locations overseas, right? So I select Spain, and they're like, hey.
Because I was like, if you didn't select Spain, I'd be like,
right? So I actually selected Spain. That was actually where I was supposed to ship out to. And then 2 weeks before I was supposed to ship out to my first duty station, they canceled my orders. And they basically were like, hey, we're sending you to Coronado. So I joined the military to go right back to California, 2 hours south of where I'm from. But I mean, ultimately for me at the time, I was hoping for something more worldwide, right? But it ended up working out for me. That's where I met my wife, Catherine. We got married in 2011.
Did she serve as well, or
no? She was a civilian. Yeah. Okay. So she went to school out there, UCSD. So she was a chemist major. So she worked a little bit out there part time when we used to live out in San Diego. So basically, we've been married a little over 13 years now, going on 14.
Child?
Yeah. So we had our first child last year. So it took a little bit of time for us to have a kid.
What's wrong with it?
No. So we kind of got in the right place and stuff. So I did 2 years out in San Diego. We primarily did law enforcement, physical security. So that's pretty much what I did across all my duty stations. And then after San Diego, I got stationed pretty much all shore duty. I actually got pretty lucky.
Never had
yeah. So oh no, I pretty much I got short. Like my sea rotation was actually in Guam. So yeah, right, yeah. So all my sea duty translated to shore experience. But if I would have stayed active duty, or if I would have stayed long term, right? If I would have done my last 10 years, I definitely would have eventually went on a carrier or something to that extent.
Rank did you pick up before you transitioned?
I was a E6 by the time I got out.
Second class or first class?
First class.
Okay, there we go.
Yep. So first class, MA1. So after San Diego, I selected orders to go to the Bahamas. They actually have it's a small remote testing center out there for underwater acoustics for submarines. So basically obviously for me, I did security out there. Not a lot to do out there, honestly. It was, spearfish and drink. That was the two main things to do outside of working out.
That doesn't like to drink. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah. So it was good. It was a long 2 years for me. But I got a lot out of there. Met a few people. And then I was in the Bahamas from 2013 to 2013. And then the end of 2013, I got orders to Guam.
Oh, stop 1 second. I just want mentioned that he got married in 2011. What better freaking honeymoon gift than the PCS to the Bahamas to being newly married?
So remember we were kind of talking earlier, there was kind of a caveat to that. There was actually a 2-year dependent restricted tour.
She was
Yeah.
not happy.
She was not there. Nope. So I only got to see my wife on weekends occasionally, like once a month. I would fly back to Florida to go see her.
Oh, oh,
And she flew out there a few times. Like you could have guests to come out to visit you and stuff. So she came out like 2 or 3 times, I believe. So she came out a few times. But yeah, it was a long 2 years, especially being newlyweds. We were kind of, we didn't really get that kind of like that time together.
you had to work on communication skills with your spouse, big time.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So it probably made you stronger.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Because going from being newlyweds to we lived together for about a year, right? Or maybe a little over a year. And then going from being together for a year, and then now we're basically becoming 2 separate households in a sense, right? I'm in the Bahamas, she's in Florida, right? She's living her life. She was doing school at the time. And then she got into other like activities and stuff like that, just kind of keep busy and whatnot. But yeah, definitely hard.
You went
Not
to
as hard.
though. That was a dependent company tour, correct?
It was,
Okay.
yeah. So
We call that the Japanese poor version of Hawaii.
I called it the poor version of, that exactly, poor version of Hawaii. Yep. But it was a lot of fun. I would say Guam, I probably grew the most in my career. I was working a lot. I did a lot of different collateral duties out there. I mean, that's where I really kind of picked my career back up, because in the Bahamas, I really just didn't do a lot. I kind of just coasted, just did the bare minimum. In Guam, I got almost regional sailor of the year. Yeah, I got a lot of accolades out of there. I got like 3 NAMs. I gained what's that?
The achievement medal.
Yeah. So I got 3 Navy
medal with the oak leaf, basically.
Yep. So three NAMs from that location. Got a lot of a different experience. Worked as a career counselor out there. Worked a fitness leader out there. I did the Joint Marianas burial detail out there. So that was another thing that I did out there. I ran that program for probably about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
So that gets you all the way to what? 2015, 16, probably?
2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2016, and I met a lot of good friends out there. A lot of good friends. A lot of them I still speak to this day. So 2016, we got orders again. I always feel like when I was transitioning, I never really got my actual selection of orders. I was always just told where to go. Like it was just never like, hey, you're going to go where you want to go, right? It was always just like, we're going to send you where we want to send you, right? And so I don't know if you're familiar with order selections and order process. So we have a 12-month window, right? First 3 months, and I would always come up on my last month and I always call the detailer, and they're like, and I would always pick what I was qualified for, right? Or eligible for. And they would always just be like, well, we're sorry, but we're going to send you here. Or they would give me like an ultimatum, right? Do you want to go to Bahrain or do you want to go to Guam, right? Which was kind of my thing. And I was like, well, I'd rather go to Guam than a desert.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so fast forward to 2016, I actually got to kind of select where I wanted to go for the first time in like almost 9 years, or say 8 years. And so that was actually kind of nice. I selected Washington pretty much all down the board, right? I went Whidbey Island, I went Naval Base Kitsap, I think Manchester was on there as well. So I basically, Everett, that was another location. And basically I got out of law enforcement and I did harbor security my last 2 years. So I was able to kind of branch out in I would say the MA community, and doing harbor my last like 2.5 years kind of really allowed me to kind of learn a little bit more about myself, because I had a little bit more downtime than I did in law enforcement, because it's always like go, 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 right? You're either standing gate, you're on patrol, right? You're always like constantly doing something, right? Where harbor was a little bit more laid back. You had a little bit more downtime, I mean, still a lot of work, right? but definitely more time to kind of do more things, you know.
Were there basically until you transitioned in 2019?
Yep. So kind of had to make that ultimatum, make that ultimate decision on, do I want to get out? You know, kind of reach that halfway point, right? I was at 9.5.
Do you go on to other pastures, right?
Yep. So I basically had to give up my Seaway quota. I didn't tell a lot of people that I was getting out. I kind of kept it a secret. I didn't tell any of my chiefs, my senior enlisted advisors. I kind of just kept it on the, I think I might have told one or two people, but I kept it because I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to do it or not. But once my wife was on board, and she basically just told me like, hey, if you're unhappy, you know, get out. And
Pause there for a second. I want the audience to understand, again, every person that I interview or people that are part of my sphere, most successful ones always include their family, i.e. their spouse, into these life-making decisions, right? So was that ever a question for you, or did you were just like, hey, babe, what do you think?
well, I mean, you have to include. I would have to include her in that decision because she's going to go with
Think
me
so.
wherever I go next.
I think so. But do you realize how many people don't and end up not having successful marriages, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of friction and tension because whenever I'm talking to veterans, I always, and I meet them with their spouses, or female, doesn't matter. I always say, thank you for your service to the veteran. That I also said, thank you for your support, spouse, because people don't realize how much spouses deal with anytime, especially if they've been married to someone that's served any length amount of time. Like in your case, 9 years, 10 years. Out of those 10 years, you guys were married for at least 5 of them, right? And for a spouse that may have a career already that has to also, like for us, uplifting and PCSing, permanent change of station, part of the gig. You're going straight into another role you're already familiar with. Where for a spouse, may top of their game here, but now they've got to move, and if they can't remote work, they got to try to find something if they can't, right? And that creates a lot of stress. Thankfully, you guys didn't add children into the equation at that point either, right? So
yeah.
Okay. So she agreed with you. I'm just curious, the Northwest though, like that's a big difference from Florida or Southern California or Guam. So
Yeah, I think for both of us, we had a mutual kind of a agree. We actually came up here several times. My brother used to live in the area up here, so we actually visited the area 2 or 3 times prior to actually getting stationed up here. We actually came up here for right after we got married. We had a honeymoon. We took a 7-day cruise out of Seattle and then went up to Alaska. So we went to Juneau, Skagway, Victoria, Canada. So we came up here a few times, and then I came up here a few times on my own. My brother got married up here, and I don't know, I like the area, and for me, I like colder weather. I'm not like a warm weather fiend. And I really think also too, like kind of going through like an actual fall and actual winter kind of makes you more hardy. And I think it actually makes you more appreciative of warmer weather. At least it does for me. So when,
I would agree. Yeah.
right, when April actually does come around and the flowers start coming out and the sun actually starts peeking out of the clouds and you actually feel the vitamin D for the first time in 6 months, you know, for me, I appreciate it more than like when I used to live in Southern California. I just took it for granted, you know, or sunny every day and 70 degrees, even during the winter, you know?
Okay.
So,
Well, you decided to get out. What were some of the challenges that you faced in this transition period?
I think the biggest challenge for me was not having a retirement, right? So finding my main source of income, like what was I going to do? And I think that kind of led me into a big part of going into Vet Tribe. And I kind of found it kind of, I just kind of found it like kind of just being dumb, I guess, if that's how you want to
By
call it.
accident?
By accident. I was on LinkedIn and I just saw like a flyer for a military networking event. And I want to say that was probably a few months after they originally founded the group. So one of the first times I went was in the summer of 2019. And
Pandemic.
so I was like, yeah, pre-pandemic, which was amazing because I was actually supposed to get out April. I was going to sign the EOS, an extension to, what was it, March of, yep, to March of 2020. So imagine what that would have done for me. That would have put me, yeah, me trying to find a job would have just not been good. So I got out during a prime time. So Pre-pandemic, everything was open. But for me, it was just trying to find the right resources. I would always say I've always been driven. So transitioning out wasn't really hard for me. It was just more finding the right resources.
That would have been deep, right? Trying to find the right.
Yeah, that I could apply it right to where I wanted to go.
How instrumental was TAPS or any of those organizations that you were involved with on the, big Navy side? Were they?
I think TAPS helped. I think TAPS did. So I'll speak on TAPS. TAPS was a week long, right? And it provided the information I needed, right? Department of Labor, like I said, was there. They at the time, I don't know if they changed the formatting, but they took up like 80% of the work, right, of the time. So they pretty much went like, hey, this is how you apply for a job. This is how you write a resume. This is how you conduct yourself in an interview,
Basics.
Yeah, the basics. There wasn't the, how do you use your VA? How do you apply for a VA disability? How do you work with a VSO? How do you set up? There's all kinds of different things.
So basically, they gave you the basics. In the Army, we'd call it a skill level 10 class versus a skill level 40 class, right? Like
right.
Okay. So they checked the box by saying, "Yep, we did this." What's varying to me was obviously didn't start your rating while you were going through taxing the VA.
What do you mean? Oh yeah. Okay. So I see where you're going. Yeah.
You starting your meeting at least 180 days out before you enter the service, right?
Yeah. So I was proactive with mine. Yeah. So I did all the research on that. I didn't mess around on that part. So I think I submitted mine 90 days out. It wasn't 100. It wasn't 120 days out. So I got that.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that squared away. But then I also went through another program through Syracuse University, 4-block. Have you heard of 4-block?
Yes.
I actually got to go through 4-block right after I got out. So that was, I don't remember how long it was. It was like 2-3 weeks long, however long the course was. That helped me out a lot. Because I would go home, I had assignments to do. A lot of it was just kind of like redefining myself, finding myself as a person, right? Because when you're getting out of the military, you're kind of like one-sided, right? You're just like, I joined when I was 21. I didn't join when I was 18, right? So I had a little bit of experience going into the military. But still, when you spend a large chunk of time in the military, you kind of get indoctrinated into the system, right? Whether good or bad, So
yeah.
For me, I had to kind of like relearn everything, and then kind of how do I translate my experience back into a civilian terminology, or how do I market myself essentially, So that was kind of
basically came in to help as well. Then,
yeah. So it kind of that helped out quite a bit too, right? So I went through 4-block back in 2019. They were doing now I think it's pretty much in Seattle. I don't know if they're doing it on our side anymore. But I got the luxury to do it over here, which was awesome. And so when I went to my first Vet Tribe event, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't nervous, but I was probably overdressed for the event because we pretty much kind of focus on bringing professional networking, but at the same time just kind of like an informal networking session.
We'd call that aloha casual in Hawaii.
Pretty much, right? So my first event I went to, pretty much I was there as the job seeker. I was trying to, network with people, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, right? So basically when I got out of the military, I was pretty much high and right. I had no desire to do anything security-wise anymore. I've been that type of person where like I've always known, like I've always had to be good at something, right? But I've never had like that yearning in life where I'm like, I want to be a doctor or I want to be an airline pilot. I've never had that like calling, you know what I mean? I just know that I have to be good at whatever I do, right? So fast forward, I'll kind of bring Vet Tribe back a little bit. I was going to job fairs left and right. I was going to pretty much every job fair that was coming up on the radar I was at, right? It was getting to a point where I was walking into job fairs and all the employers knew me by first name. They're like, "Here comes Kevin walking down the aisle." It's like looking at all my, yeah. So I would walk into the job fair, and so luckily I went to a job fair. It was a 2-day job fair for PSNS and IMF, which is one of our local shipyards out here. And I was actually applying for an admin position. And I had like 3 different resumes drafted, right? And this is also pre-Vet Tribe as well, right? So Vet Tribe kind of at this point helped me, introduced me to a lot of people, right? Through WorkSource. So I worked on my resume with different people. And so I developed a pretty good standard government resume. So I had a security resume, I had an HR resume, and then I had a port ops resume because, like, again, I did port operations. So I basically walked in this job fair and I was like, hey, my name's Kevin Maddel. There's this gentleman doing his elevator pitch in front of me. You know, if people don't know what an elevator pitch, it's basically kind of like an introduction, right?
It's your 30 seconds.
Yeah, his 30 seconds, and I'm kind of standing behind him like, come on, man, hurry up. Like, he was taking forever, right? And so I got up there and I was like, hi, my name's Kevin, all confident, kind of cocky, right? And I give my introduction and hand my resume to the hiring manager, to the branch manager. And she's like, well, Kevin, you sound like you're a great admin professional, but do you want to explain to me why you handed me a security resume? So, yeah, I kind of dumbly handed my security resume to her, right? And I think these were just like general GS, like entry level positions, right? GS 6, 7, right? And so she takes my resume, goes to another branch manager and says, I think we're actually hiring for a security specialist, right? And so at the time I was just like, I'm not interested in doing security, right? But I've never done industrial security or information security, right? That was new to me, right? I've dealt with like, I had experience doing it, right? But I never like fully invested myself into that field, right? And so the hiring manager came back to me and was like, hey, here we have an interview, we have an open position. And I was like, well, can I know what it pays, or, you know, like a little bit information on it? Like they just assumed I was going to come back tomorrow for interview, right? And it ultimately was a GS9 to a 12. And I was like, what time do you want me back tomorrow? Spit sign shoes and everything. So, yeah. And so that's kind of how I found my first job. And I've basically been doing the same job ever since. I worked up at bank.
Not necessarily the same company, correct? Or same?
Actually, I've been in the same position for over 5 years now. Same company. So I work for production resources for the shipyard. And so I basically do probably run one of the largest information security programs for NAVSEA. I have about 10,000 employees under my umbrella. It's me and another coworker of mine. So it's a very large program that we run. So for prior to that, though, I worked up at Bangor, which is one of our local bases. I worked up there as a deckhand for like 3 months, and it just was not for me. And it was kind of a filler job for me. And once I got the all clear for the job that I got hired onto, I basically jumped on it and been there ever since. So,
Deckhand, indoor job, right?
No. It's all weather job. Line handling, cleaning boom. I mean, you pretty much sell it. You pretty much like a crustacean when you come home. I mean, the washer was pretty much on daily operations. Yeah.
Let's tie back to Vet Tribe. So Vet Tribe have a role in you meeting at this job fair,
Yeah, in several different ways. One way was for me, I met a gentleman. His name is Rudy Morel. He was probably one of my first contacts. And then there's another person. Her name's Nancy Zellers. She works for WorkSource out here for Kitsap County. And those two individuals were very instrumental because they helped me with my resume writing several times. There's another gentleman. His name's Adrian. I think it's Algeciras, if I pronounced it correctly. So between those three, Vet Tribe really was kind of the reason why I got the job and everything, right? I mean, I was proactive in the sense of networking and getting my resume more up to speed, right? And making it ready for OPM standards, right? For higher HR. But because of them, they provided me the resources and the expertise to get my resume to where it was at, right?
You go to this really cool networking event that you're overdressed for, meet some like-minded people that are all about just helping veterans and getting into the civilian workforce.
And I think that's what it was about for me too, right? My first event, I got inundated, right? There was just so much and everybody wanted to help me, right? There was no ego involved, right? Everyone was generally there to provide help in some way, right? And I think that's what makes our organization so unique is nobody's getting paid, right? Everybody's showing up because they want to help the veteran community up here. And I think that's what makes our organization special, right? Everyone kind of comes in and everyone has like their own like support and expertise coming in to our networking.
Hey folks, if you're here, that means this podcast has went at least 25 minutes. And I don't know whether I should apologize or say thank you, because that means if you're watching me right now, you're actually finding value in this episode. I'm asking you to do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and share so that way other people can also enjoy the benefit of the information that we're putting out each week.
Events.
Love that, because you and I talked prior to the show. I had a hard time, trying to figure out where you guys were social media wise. I mean, and literally there's two places that you guys excel in. That's Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah. So our LinkedIn page, we have, you could probably correct me if I'm off on our numbers a little bit, but our LinkedIn page, we have a little over 2,400 followers, I believe. So we have, for a local group as small as we are, we have a pretty big following, right?
I love it. So,
yeah. And then our Facebook page, our Facebook page, we have a little over 1,000, I believe now. So we get a lot of our information out through social media, right? We were running a website for a little while, but we kind of figured that the network traffic going through the website just really wasn't hitting home, because we were asking people, hey, how did you hear about us, right? And it was always those two platforms for the most part, right?
Hold down on those.
Yeah. And then we also talked about the TAPS classes as well that are out here, right? So we have resources. I think his last name's Williams, but he works up for TAPS class up at Bangor. He's one of the kind of runs the program out there. So he puts out our events as well through the local classes. So we also reach military members that way. And then a lot of it's just word of mouth too, right? We have other people who work at WorkSource. So there's veterans that go through WorkSource all the time. So they hear about our events that way. So there's a dozen different ways that people kind of hear about our events. And we try to make
about your story that I probably forgot to convey to the audience. In fact, I know I didn't. You're basically a networking volunteer within Vet Tribe now. You started as someone seeking assistance, helped you.
That's correct.
You felt like, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but you felt like, all right, I got to be able to give back too. And you continue to stay with Vet Tribe to help others achieve the same results or better than yourself.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is just having that passion doing it. So you remember how I kind of said professionally, I've never really had that yearning for like an actual occupation, right? But for me, I have more of a passion for giving back to the veteran community. And I found that with Vet Tribe, right? So that's definitely been, I would say, my calling for helping veterans and stuff like that. And I also, and I know we didn't really kind of touch on this, but I also do, I've done dozens and dozens of online classes with one-on-ones from people from Vet Tribe. And I'll actually go over like resume writing with them as far as things that I've learned from industry experts, right? From people who have taught me how to write a resume, right? And I'll show them like, hey, here's my resume. I even have an example federal resume that I'll give them. I'll show them like different resources that they can use and stuff like that. So like ONET Online is a good resource.
Before and after, like, hey, this is kind of what my resume looked like before. This is what it looks like now, and this is kind of the standard, right? Like,
yeah. And I even tell them a backstory. Like, I actually paid someone the first time to write my resume for me, which was probably the worst thing that I could have done, right? Because only you know yourself the best, right? And so for me, once I kind of figured out like I can write a resume, I just had to kind of be shown the way, right?
Talking about that. I mean, you think about it. Most military service members always given right and left limits. And anybody that's served in a leadership capacity, which is a junior NCO or higher, pretty much do anything because you have your left and right. You have your guardrails, right? Yeah, to say that, yes, you should be able to write your own resume. I think anybody in the military that served definitely should be able to write their own resume, because you need is the format. You show me what, I tell people all the time, I will execute anything you need me to get done. You just give me my guardrails and I'm going to do it. Right. Like, so, and I think that's really what it boils down to, is that's part of that hesitancy when people get out. They're like, shoot, I don't have guardrails. Right? Where you come to an organization like Vet Tribe, people like yourself and say, okay, here's our guardrails, right? This is, do this. This is the space that you got to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like I said, like so funding wise, when we can kind of get into that maybe a little bit, but we're really not funded by anybody, right? So we're not like confined, right? We don't have a boss telling us how we need to manage our events or how things need to be and right. So we don't have like any stipulations like holding us up, right? So we can make it as organic as we want it to be, which is, I think, why it's so successful up here.
Talk about success stories, right? One of the things that we talked about earlier that you didn't mention as a success, but I, as a fellow veteran entrepreneur, this person, way that you host your events, you're very pragmatic about it. And with where you host them, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. For Vet Tribe, so we generally host a networking event once a month, right? So we have a 3-hour time block. So it's always in person. And so it's from 5 to 8 p.m. It's a 3-hour time block, and we always host it at a brewery. And we try to pick a veteran-owned brewery, not always, but most of the time. And it's always going to be like a smaller owned brewery. And so by doing that, it provides kind of like that casual networking experience, right? Having that first drink kind of helps break the ice between you and, the hiring manager, or you and the resource that you're talking to, right? So I think it kind of helps kind of break those kind of borderlines, right? So, and then essentially what we do is we rotate between North Kitsap, Central Kitsap, and South Kitsap, right? So we go Bremerton, Silverdale, Poulsbo, Silverdale, Bremerton. So we've kind of broken it down to 3 locations. Before, we were kind of jumping around more sporadically. I would actually be driving around and just like looking for like new breweries that would pop up. I would call my counterpart Bill, and I was like, "Hey, you want to host over here?" And he's like, "I've never been there. Like, what are they about?" Right? So we were kind of finding like, we kind of came to the consensus that we need to like pick 3 locations and kind of stick with those locations, right? Because I think that offered more stability and it makes it easier for planning the events. So essentially, our role is when we do host our events, we do so during the middle of the week. So we're bringing in business for the brewery. So both sides are kind of benefiting, right? So we don't have to pay like an entry fee. We don't have to pay a reservation fee, right? So that's how we kind of keep it cost effective, cost free. So, and then that also benefits the brewery. So they don't have to, they get business on one of their slower days as well.
And it makes sense. Like you said, it's a double win, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about, you and I were talking about a success story. It involved you personally, and I really liked it, about how Vet Tribe introduced you to someone. Believe it or not, folks, it was a guest that we had here on the show. Tell me a little bit about that.
So it was, I think it was 2020, maybe a few months before 2020. Maybe November. I can't really recall, but basically showed up at the event. At this point, I kind of started volunteering more. So I kind of transitioned from that, participant to participee, if that's a word, right? So I would kind of say that I kind of became a member of Vet Tribe, right? Kind of helping host the events more. But I actually met Kyle Peterson, who owns Atlas Consulting Group. Be Vet Strong, and I met him at Cranes Castle Brewery, and I sat down with him. I probably talked to him for a good hour, and just kind of asked him, hey, what do you do and stuff. He was like, I help veterans get paid more. And I was like, okay, well that answers my question. And he kind of elaborated a little bit more. He was like, well, I help veterans get re-rated and stuff, and I was like, really? Like, I've never heard of that. I didn't even know it was a thing, right? I'm not that familiar with that. I kind of knew what I knew, kind of getting out the 120 days prior to getting out, that kind of stuff, but I didn't know you could re-rate yourself, right? Well, I kind of had that idea, but a lot of it was just kind of like you paid the company, and I just didn't feel comfortable doing it because I just wasn't familiar with it. And so I kind of told him my story. There was a few conditions that I got 0% ratings on that I felt that I should have gotten a higher rating. And so basically kind of told him my backstory. And then we linked up. A few weeks later, he had a consultant. And mind you, this is back when he was still kind of starting up his company.
He literally, in 19, he had just started. He was 6 to 9 months old at that point.
Yeah, I think he was maybe 5 or 6 months, maybe at best, with his company. So he was doing a lot of the cases himself, I think. So really, I kind of worked with him personally versus now, if I would have went with him now, it probably would have been a different consultant, right?
I mean, he's got like 25 consultants, I think, now.
Yeah. So it definitely would not be Kyle now, but Kyle, I would definitely say Kyle was instrumental to my success, right? His company got me and basically re-rated me completely, right? He got me an over 50% rating on my rating, changed my life. right? Like definitely gives me a lot more financial flexibility with what I can do now versus what I could do before.
It's one of many success stories. Someone that had Kyle still.
Yeah. And anytime he's my number one, his company, like, so if someone's like, I'm not happy with how I was rated, Kyle's my number one go-to guy, or Atlas is. I'm just like, you need to go to Atlas, And for me, because there are some veterans out there that are afraid to pay money, right? They don't want to have, and I'm the same way, right? Like, because I talk about Vet Tribe, and we talk about we don't charge anybody anything, right? Which we don't. But sometimes to get a good service, sometimes you have to pay something, right? And what I liked about Kyle's mentality, though, was the consultation was free, right? But the money they do charge you, the way I looked at it, is money that you were never going to see in the first place, right? It pretty much just came out of my back pay, right? I filed the consultation, and however much it was, I think it was $2,300 or something like that. But it was like I got a $7,000 check or however much it was for my back pay, right? So took it out of that, and it was money that I would have never have saw anyhow if it wasn't for them. And I've referred.
I want to caveat on that just real quick. I think part of the reason why most veterans are afraid to spend, liken this to the reason why I conduct the business the way I conduct business now. Still have a high and tight, right? This is a week old haircut, but I get my haircut every 2 weeks, right?
I'm the same way.
And anytime that we go out into the community to purchase anything of your importance, a car, loan, or we'll see the high and tight, and the first thing they want to do is say thank you for your service as they thank you pocketbook, right? So it's all disingenuous. So we're naturally guard, right? Because I'm sure all of us at one point in time have bought something from someone that we thought was a great salesperson and really cared about us, but really didn't. Oh, especially when you start talking about something of this nature, yeah, it's difficult to say, is it worth the investment? Reason why, like Kyle and other folks that are in Vet Tribe, or even myself, not part of Vet Tribe, you can provide a safe educational space where you're not selling something, you're just explaining.
Mm-hmm.
That allows veterans to process better and say, you know what, this actually makes sense. Let's move forward, right? I'm pretty sure the whole time that you were talking with Kyle, there was no selling involved. He literally just said, hey, yeah, this is this is what you can do, right?
Yeah, and yeah, exactly right. And that's kind of like, just again, that's just a success story just for me personally, right?
Well, let's go back to your own personal. You said I made the mistake of hiring someone to write my resume, paid money, worst money I ever invested.
Yeah.
You've got people here now that will help you for free because they generally want to see you succeed, right?
Yeah. Versus people who want to help you because they want to see the money first, right? And you might not even see a result because of it, So and that I had both experiences, right? I had the Vet Tribe. Every experience I have through Vet Tribe is positive. I've never had a negative experience. At least that's just been my experience. But everybody I talk to, every single time we get done, somebody has, they either met somebody or they found the resource that they were looking for, right? Or they found that job. Sometimes they find a job. It's not always, you're not going to always find a job the first time you come to one of our events, right? It might take 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 times, right? Or you might down the road, even for me, right? I could eventually go to a Vet Tribe, maybe, a year from now, and I might find somebody who's hiring for a security position at a different base or something. And I might, hey, I have 6 years of experience working in cyber and information systems, right? So I think that's what makes us very unique. And there was nobody really kind of filling that void up here in our area, right? So there was no networking events, kind of like what we're doing now. And so I think the co-founder Bill Martin, who started the group, I think that was his vision with starting the group, right? Was let's get a group together, right? And it basically was like whoever we could pull, right? And that was a unique thing, right? Because the first few times that they had the events, we had no idea who was going to show up, right? It could just have been 2, 3 people, and we would have just called it a day, right? But it was just this slow progression where we started actually getting industry experts and stuff. I mean, we've even had the MCPON, Rick West, come out to our event.
And Big Pond West, I know him.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, he's actually come out to our events, right? So it yeah, we kind of just get a little bit of everybody. Yeah.
So before we wrap it up, I have one question left, and I always ask everybody that's on the show, two questions, sorry. Because the first question is out of your group of folks that come to these events, what percentage would you say is still active duty versus they transitioned? That's a short answer. If you had a best guess.
So I would definitely say it's a mix between, I guess I could just call it 50-50, right?
Cool.
I would definitely say it's probably a little bit higher with the active duty military getting out of the military, right? But what we kind of really focus on are transitioning military more, I would say, because that's kind of our larger audience. But we also try to help. We also focus, because if you look at all of our networking events, we put active duty, military spouses, and veterans, right? So that's kind of like the core group that we're trying to hit, and so that's kind of like the main pool that we're trying to go to. But it also, with military spouses, they're also looking for that transition help too. I'm pretty sure you're aware, you served, you retired out of the Army, right? So your spouse was instrumental to your success as well, right? And so we can provide those resources to military spouses as well, right? Because I think also military spouses can kind of get forgotten about sometimes too,
Yep.
right? As the kind of the secondary. So I think for us, we try to make them also a primary, right? I don't think we look at any one group less than the other, right? I think we all try to look at them in primary in their own way, right? Veterans,
That being the case, then my final question would be is what advice do you have to either veterans currently serving, getting ready to transition, that have already transitioned, and military spouses that are same camps, right? Whether their spouse is getting ready to transition or they've already transitioned. What would be your best advice?
I think the best advice is just stay proactive. Find out what groups that you have in your local area.
About that.
We'll try to, like
I'm in your area, right? So
we have Vet Tribe in our area, right? I mean, you have all kinds of different resources, right? Just looking at, you kind of introduced me to the PCS groups. So there's all kinds of, and every base usually for the most part has resource groups, like JBLM TAPS. They have resource groups that kind of help you for like the Army and Navy getting out of active duty up there, down south from us.
Let's just narrow it down. If you're a veteran serving in the state of Washington, from Bremerton, Kitsap, all the way down to JBLM, how can they get involved with Vet Tribe?
So, I mean, pretty much the easiest ways is just to follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Those are probably the easiest. We post all of our events that way. And usually we have our current month plus the next month out. We try to do our best to keep the next month posted, so that way people can, prepare, get ready, and stuff like that, and kind of put it on their calendar.
Right?
Yep. We do it once a month.
3 locations, north, south, and central Kitsap area, right? Or
correct.
Area,
yep.
Right. Okay. But that's not limiting people. I mean, if you're from JBLM, you're not in the Navy, but you're still a veteran. I mean,
oh yeah. No, yeah, we're definitely
drive. I think from JBLM, you guys, it's that.
Yeah. If there's no traffic, it's usually about a 30 to, I would say about 40-45 minutes, to get up here.
I-5, yeah.
Yeah, you go I-5 and then you take the 16 to get up here to Bremerton. Yeah, so up here to Kitsap. But most people who are from JBLM or from that area, they're pretty familiar with the Kitsap area up here as well.
I would say, right?
Yeah. But I mean,
5-minute drive is a big deal if it's something that can definitely have a positive impact on your future life.
Yeah. And going back to the resources, a lot of it's just kind of like doing your research, right? Just, I would say networking is probably the biggest thing that you can do during your transition, getting out of the military, right? I think
what would you recommend? LinkedIn is the primary networking source?
There's all kinds of different ways to network, right? You got old traditional ways, right? Going to job fairs, right? Boots on ground, right? That was one way that I did it. Building my network up through LinkedIn, which I had no idea what I was doing at the time, right? Also didn't know that LinkedIn provided a 1-year free subscription to a premium to veterans getting off active duty. which I took it full advantage of. I activated it 6 months prior to getting out. So I had 6 months while I was active duty and then 6 months after I got off active duty. So I kind of utilized it, I think, to the best time that I could, right? And then really, yeah, I would definitely say, even Facebook, right? You have a lot of professional network groups on Facebook that offer transition help, right? You said, what was the one that we were talking about earlier?
People with pearls of wisdom here for a moment. So you're giving them some great advice, but a lot of people are gonna be like, all right, how? See this right here? This is your
smartphone.
Like, I guarantee you I have over 5,000 contacts in here, right? When I first got out, I didn't realize how powerful this is. When I say LinkedIn, the cool thing about like the LinkedIn app or Facebook app, it'll ask you, do you want to connect with people that are already in your contacts? Because trying to go through 3,000 or 5,000 names could be somewhat tedious. But at the same time, we're talking about preparing for your future life. Start there, right? Who are people that I've been in contact with? Who are people that I know? Who are people that actually I've been in contact with, I know, and I've done some kind of, I don't want to say necessarily business or transaction with, but I've done something, some kind of event, right? Start there. Start with your circle small, and then grow it outward, right? And then key to networking is it's more about coming with an empty hand. It's also coming with an olive branch. So networking, it's about, okay, I know these people. I want to get to know them. They may not know each other. So now I can be a conduit to connect people together. Right?
Yeah. And then that's
your power of networking, right?
Right. And that's another thing too that I kind of relate to veterans getting out or transitioning military or even military spouses, is that with LinkedIn specifically, what I learned is try to create your LinkedIn profile, but try to create your network to what you want to do, right? So if right. So like if you were interested in going to human resourcing, right, try to ask questions to people who are in that group, right? And that's one thing I think I didn't really utilize to the full extent, because I was just adding everybody when I first started my LinkedIn, right? Because I didn't know what I was doing, kind of. Now I use it for like Vet Tribe, and I use it for just networking and just talking to people, varying industries, right? And I'll even get like a question from somebody about like, hey, how do you run your information security program, right? And then I'll like answer it to the best I can.
Right? That's what it is.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Value and you provide value. That's the thing, right? It can't be a one-sided affair, right? Which again, when you first get started, it is going to be one-sided, because if you haven't been, I tell people, don't wait until you're 180 days out from transitioning. You should be thinking, one of the guests I had on the show before, Gundes, he started 3 years out, right? He knew 3 years out, like, man, I really need to start getting my network dialed in to what I want to do, right? So the sooner you can do it, the better, right? If you're already finish line, you can still start, right? Like, I mean, bottom line, that the most important things that you can have is a good, solid referral network in general, right? Believe it or not, whatever you're good at provides one point of value. Make you the most powerful, or the most, I'm looking for, to your network, is being able to connect people within your network to one another that they will know.
And I think that's what we do so good, right? Is like, I might not know the question to something, but I can refer them to the next person that does have that answer,
right?
And that's what that's pretty much what we're all about, networking those services.
Yes, because that's the thing is, we'll meet you one time and know that, okay, hey, I'm cybersecurity. However, you know someone, and that it happens to me every day. Call me as a VA lender. Don't just call me to ask me questions about VA lending. They'll be like, Jay, a financial planner, right? Yeah, I do. Can you introduce him to me? Absolutely, right? Like, I mean, they'll ask me a question like, hey, Jay, do you know someone in this field? I'll be like, you know what? I have a first, line of succession to this person, but I know someone who does. Let me get you, to them, and let me work the network and find out. And that's how you stay top of mind and stay connected in an indirect way.
Yep. Like I had I think it was our last event, I had a gentleman come up to me and ask me if I knew anything about electrical engineering, or like if I knew somebody. I was like, all right, hang on, let me go ask our Blue Origins guy. He might be able to kind of answer that question to see if they have any job openings, right? And kind of get you into that, to that industry and stuff. So
it doesn't cost anything. That's the crazy. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
No, it doesn't cost. Yep.
a human being just to help someone out, right? Like
I think when we get people who do come back, right, they come back because there isn't that like stigma that they owe something or anything like that, right? Or like there's no, like I mentioned on our pre-interview, right? There's no ego involved with this group at all. It's just
there's no BNI
it's all
fixes, I would say.
yeah.
Right?
No one's nobody's gaining anything from it. The only thing people are gaining from it is actual like knowledge of getting out of the military, right? Getting the resource that they need, or potentially the job that they've been looking for, or the information for the job that they are inquiring about, right? Or getting the resume help. So it could be it could be anything, you know.
I personally believe this. Nothing feels great or gratifying. This is to include, even if I come to I'm Joe Schmuckatelli that just gets out. I'm coming there. You guys help me find my new future employment. That's great. That's awesome. It's going to feel great for the moment. That's kind of like eating fish for a day. Gratifying part is being, damn, somebody help me. I can't wait to try to help someone else. Call that selfish if you want, but I'd much rather be surrounded by a bunch of selfish people that feel good about themselves because they help people, is that feels good about themselves because they did a transaction or a deal.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
I really think that's probably why people keep coming back to Vet Tribe, because I think the way they feel about themselves as human beings by helping others, right? Helping other human beings. So that's the vibe I get from you guys. So Kevin, dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, we spent 2 hours together, basically. It was only supposed to be an hour, but getting to talk to you first and going live. Folks, in the Washington area, and you don't have to necessarily be on the I-5 corridor. If you're a veteran serving in Washington, trust me, my Tri-Cities folks, I know that's about a 4-hour drive, but, you know, if you're heading to the western part of Washington, these guys out, you know, Vet Tribe on Facebook and Vet Tribe on LinkedIn. Connect with Kevin. I know he'd love to talk to you as well. It for this week. Can't wait to see you next week. Take care and aloha. Bye-bye.